Now, I've never told this story before because honestly, I don't know what people are gonna take away from it. But it is part of my story. It involves bullying, fighting, kind of setting a bad example, but winning in the end. And that's the moral that I can't figure out what people are gonna take away from it. I'm out for a walk with my blind guy cane, as I am Pete Guston, the blind surfer. And I say that these days, and people think it's cool. They recognize me with my cane, or they see me out and about, or they see me surfing. They're like, blind surfer, that's cool.
We recognize you from way out there.
But when I was growing up, being blind was not cool. It was not something I was proud of. Of course, it did happen slowly. I wasn't blind immediately. I was losing my eyesight gradually. And by the time I got to junior high school, it was noticeably bad. I had large print books because I could still kind of read those, but mostly I was doing books on tape. You?
Surfer?
Yeah.
So
Where are you at?
I'm John.
Good to meet you.
Man.
So like I was saying, people recognize me these days and it's all cool and stuff. A little distracting, but as a kid in 7th grade, trying to figure out where I want to go. Being the blind kid in junior high school was not cool. I was getting picked on endlessly. There was a group of guys and even a couple of girls that what they did when they'd see me coming down the hallway, they'd stand really far away and go, how many fingers am I holding up? And sometimes when they'd get close and I couldn't see that they were getting close, they'd knock the books out of my hands, all that traditional, junior high school mean kid crap. And I was having a hard time with it because I mean, like, it's not fun getting picked on. And I used to go home and I would talk to my cousin. I'm an only child. And my cousin one day, just kind of offhand, I don't think he meant it as real advice, ironically, but he's like, man, what would get them to stop picking on the blind kid is if the blind kid beat him up. And he said it like as a joke. Mostly because I wasn't gonna beat anybody up in 7th grade. I think I was maybe 5'4", 5'5", 115, 120 pounds, something like that. Like I wasn't beating anybody up. And one of the kids that used to pick on me was one of those kids that got way too big, way too early. He was like 6 feet, 210 in 7th grade. And, oops, I almost just walked into something. Almost walked into some trash cans, I think. Anyway, so that's what I had to deal with. A giant kid and a bunch of other kids picking on me. But walking down the hallway one day, and one of the kids does that, hey, how many fingers am I holding up thing? And what my cousin said kind of like clicked in the back of my head, because there were no consequences from them picking on me. They just picked on me and got away with it. And I just kind of snapped and I charged at him. I could still see kind of shapes back then. I knew where he was basically, and I just kind of bull rushed him and shoved him backwards through a set of doors, and he fell down. And we did not fight. There was not a fight because it's just kind of, I think I just startled the crap out of him. He wasn't expecting that at all. And so literally for about 2, 3, 4 days, no one was making fun of me anymore because that reaction to them was pretty surprising. As I'm telling this story, I'm feeling like worse and worse about it because I don't want kids to get the wrong message. This is why I never told this story. Like, I don't want to tell everybody who's being picked on, like, start fights. It was a different time. It was a long time ago. There wasn't the kind of awareness of disabilities. I don't think people talk to their kids about this stuff. So I guess I'll just keep telling the story, but don't get the wrong message. I'm not saying this is the answer. Anyway, a few days later, another kid, as we're sitting in class, he just turns around in his seat and threw his pencil off of my forehead. Boink. And he's like, bet you didn't see that coming. I'm like, obviously not. And I kind of got pissed. We were just sitting at our desks right before the class was supposed to start. So the teacher was not in there. And I just stood up and I grabbed him. And I didn't know what to do because I didn't know how to fight. I just kind of like lost my temper and I grabbed him. And he goes, oh, you don't want to do this. I'm a black belt. And I'm like, okay. And I was like, yeah, well, I'm not gonna let you. And I was gonna say, not let you make fun of me or whatever the heck I was gonna say. I hear a car coming. And he did some sort of karate trip momentum thing, and I ended up on my face, like boom, like face first into the ground. And It hurt. It hurt really bad. I wasn't sure if I broke my nose or what, but the teacher comes in just as I'm getting up off the ground, and I'm sitting there with tears just streaming down my eyes, and the teacher's like, what happened here? And no one says anything, but he could tell it was me and this kid that had just done something, so he sends us to the principal's office. Now, this is where it gets interesting. The first kid, or the kid that just threw me on my face, he went in first and spoke to the principal, and then it was my turn. And I'm getting ready to get like suspended, or at least, very much in trouble, detention, something or other. The guy sits me down and he goes, listen, I know what you're doing. I'm like, what do you mean you know what I'm doing? He's like, oop, I just stepped off the road. He's like, I get it. He's like, I've heard the stories. I've heard you're having a tough time. I heard about that first fight you had in the hallway, which I didn't know. I had no idea that he'd heard about that. And he said, I get it. I'm like, okay, so what does this mean? And the biggest shock of my life, to that point at least, he says to me, you get one more. I'm like, one more? And he goes, you're making a point. He said, I'd be willing to bet that if there are consequences to these kids making blind jokes and you do something to them like this, they're probably gonna stop doing it at some point. I'm like, holy crap, that's what my cousin said. But my cousin was, just a few years older than me. I wasn't expecting this advice to come from an adult, let alone the principal of the school that I was going to. So he says, you get one more, and don't tell anybody this. This is many years later, and unfortunately he's passed. And I'm telling just because it still blew my mind. I feel like I had to share this. So it's not like I ran out of that room looking for one more fight. It actually had been quite a few weeks after that point that it was quiet, because people were seeing like, hey, how many fingers am I holding up isn't worth this crazy little 115-pound kid striking out at me. But we were at lunch one day, and some kid, at this point I don't exactly remember what he said, but it was another one of those, how many fingers am I holding up, or something about my eyesight. And I just kind of snapped again. I bull rushed him and I knocked him on his butt, and a bunch of food went flying, chairs went flying, and that was the extent of the fight. It was another one of those. I didn't know how to fight in 7th grade. I wasn't the one with the black belt in karate, so I just knocked the kid over, and that was kind of the end of the fight, quote unquote, at that point. And we get both brought to the principal's office, and the other kid goes in first and comes out, and he's crying because he just got yelled at by the principal. I walk in, I sit down, and he goes, that was your one more. And he's like, we're just going to talk about this for a little while. So he sat me in the chair, and he kind of asked about, how I was doing and what I thought was a better strategy, which is the whole point to this thing, that this was not a great strategy. He kind of let me get it out of my system, but this was not a good or sustainable strategy. I was going to go fighting everyone throughout my life. And he actually suggested that I run for student council. It was too late in the year. We were already halfway through it, and we had the class president, vice president and stuff. And I was like, what good is that gonna do? And he said, get out there, meet people, make friends, talk to these kids, let them see that you're not just a disability, let them see that you're a person, and by showing them that you're interested in them, by wanting to be their president, class president, he said, this is a good way to just kind of let them know that you want to do something for them. And who's gonna pick on someone that's trying to do something good for you? I thought that was a good point. I thought about it for a year, got through 8th grade, and in 9th grade I ran for student class president. I did not win that year, but my sophomore year I ran again, and I won. I won class president. I won a junior year, I won a senior year, and I made a lot of friends. It was a great strategy to kind of just get out there and meet people and talk to the kids in my class, and like he said, show them I was more than just a kid with a disability. So it was a weird way to get there. It was really interesting to me that he let me have 3 fights to get it out of my system. I guess I got the people's attention and then showed them who I really was. And I really did. I had a great, after that high school experience. 2 of the 3 kids that used to pick on me, we became really, really good friends. One of them was probably one of my best friends. And kids can be brutal. When they see something different, or see, back in those days when they see weakness they can prey on, they go after it. But once they see that you know, the person that they're picking on is a person, then it generally stops. And so, again, this is not a don't do this exactly, but that was the start of my story. That's how it began. And I guess you can take away from it what you want.